Welcome to Finch's Australia. This is our detailed video of how to pick all the meat out of a crayfish. Southern rock lobsters are caught all along the limestone coast, right through the Southern Ocean and down to Tasmania. The lobster or crayfish in our video has already been cooked. I'll give some tips at the end on how to cook them just right. This cray has already had its feelers and horns removed, and I'm just showing how to take the shell off before we start picking the meat. I'm wearing gloves in this video just to keep my hands from getting orange and just to stop the smell, but you don't have to, you can wash them well afterwards. After taking the shell off of the bottom, hold it in one hand. Place the other hand over with the thumb on top of the knob and grab it firmly and pull it down. As you do this, that should click and it should leave the knob there. So I'll just demonstrate a couple of times how to do this. I put newspaper down just to keep the area clean. I've put a bucket in the sink to put all the scraps in, and then I've got another clean container to put the meat in once we pick it. Once you've got the final leg off, you can see that there's some scraps along the side. Just pull that out and put that in the bin, and that will leave the knobs showing. And then repeat on the other side. Hold it firm in your hand, put your thumb on top and pull down. The knobs don't always come out, but if they do, it makes it for much cleaner picking because you don't need to poke it out afterwards. You can see here that not all the knobs have come off. Some of the meat is still in the legs once you've pulled it off. Now put your thumb into the hole where the knob is and pull the whole meat out. Sometimes there might be a little gel or shell here, just put that in the bin and make sure the meat's nice and clean. Once all the meat is out, after we've finished taking all the knobs out, we'll discard that part of the shell and start on the legs. You'll notice when I've picked that I've put all the legs in order, left side on the left and then the right. I use a skewer or a knitting needle or sometimes even the feeler to poke the meat out. Crayfish have spines on their legs. I'll show you how to take the meat out without getting spiked. Hold the claw in both hands and break the knob off by pressing down on the joint. The middle joint is broken by pushing it forwards or backwards. This avoids being spiked by that middle spike. The third joint is broken by bending it down. If the cray is cooked well, this will leave the meat just sitting there ready to put in the tub. The little claw on the end of the leg is removed by bending it sideways. Use the skewer to poke the meat out from the smallest end. The next 4 legs are all the same but different to the one that you've just done. I'm using the skewer again because the knob didn't come out clean when I pulled the leg off. Break the knob off at the joint by bending it down. Then bend the middle joint sideways to avoid that spike, and if cooked well, the meat should come out. I've broken that part of the leg in halves again in the middle to get the meat out. Continue to break the legs at the joints. It should leave the meat clean to put in the tub. I'll demonstrate a few more legs with this cray, and then after this one there's another cray that I'll show you that I've picked that wasn't cooked as well, and you can see the difference of pulling the meat out compared to one that's cooked and clean. This time the meat has come out nice and clean. Now bend this one down and this one back, and as you can see the cray's been well cooked. The meat is nice and juicy and it's easy to pick. As I'm picking, the shell is going in the bin in the sink and the meat is going in the tub in front of me. The second cray that I'll pick in a moment has been a little overcooked and it is quite dry and the meat doesn't come out half as easily as this one. Sometimes when you're picking, the meat doesn't come out and you have to break that part of the leg in halves in the middle to access the meat. The little claw or toenail of this end of the leg is pushed sideways for the meat to come out. The speed that I'm picking the crayfish here is about half speed or less compared to when you're picking professionally. Watching the girls pick professionally, you couldn't see their hands moving. Now I will remove the meat from the tail. Sometimes there's a bit of gel or leftover insides that you want to clean up at the end of the fish. Just tidy that up and then break the end of the tail off. Just bend it backwards. Take a sharp knife and cut down the middle. I do half at a time and then turn it around and cut the other half. I put my fingers down inside the shell about an inch and then just pull the shell away, pulling the meat of the tail out, separating it from the shell. From the knife cut down the middle, you can just splay the tail open, and quite often the poo tuber will here in the middle. You just pull that out and discard it and tidy up any other bits you need to. Then just cut it into sections about an inch square. This is the second crayfish I'm going to pick. It still has its horns on, but it doesn't have its feelers. The horns have been cut just in the front, so it's easy for me just to pull them away. The horns are very sharp and it would pay to wrap a tea towel around them to remove them. A crayfish should be drowned first in fresh water before cooking. To cook, put the crays into a large pot of boiling salted water. This cray was not cooked quite as well as the first one, and it's dirtier on the inside and not as juicy. It's critical that you've weighed each crayfish and know how much they weigh. Wait for the water to start boiling before you start timing, which means the water must come back to the boil. Each crayfish needs to be removed at just the right time to make sure that it's cooked to perfection. When the meat doesn't come out of the larger or the first claws, you may need to use the skewer to poke it out. When you poke it back, there is a spine there. You need to be careful not to spike yourself when you do it. The meat hasn't come out of this second joint. You need to put the skewer in and push it around like a C to make that come out. The meat is not coming out of the smaller second joints on this crayfish. They're too small to pick, so they just get thrown away. That's meat that you don't get to eat. Cooking the crayfish. If the cray weighs 800 grams, cook it for 8 minutes. 900 grams, cook it for 9 minutes. When the time's up, take it straight out of the hot water and put it into a tub or bucket of cold water. Not ice water, but just cold water. And leave it in there till it just cools down. You don't need to leave it in the cold water very long, just enough to cool it down. It might be still warm when you bring it out. This ensures the meat is moist and it makes the cray easier to handle. Then hang the crayfish upside down by their tails. Hook their tail over something to let all the water drain. You can see that I'm not picking this crayfish exactly as I picked the first one, but all the breaks are the same angle and broken the same way. This is that middle joint that the meat hasn't come out of. This is a better demonstration of moving the skewer in a C shape. This tail still has its poo string in, so I'm removing that and any gel or anything else at the top there that's not meat. I'm just tidying a little bit of the rubbery stuff off of the tail here. Some people don't worry, but when it's quite rubbery, I like to remove it. Once you've picked all the crayfish, just go through it gently to make sure there's no shell. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this and many more of other videos we have.
Finchies Australia, where do you start?